Hello, team players! Today I'm talking about the brand new Ancestry known as the Jotunborn. I'm really excited to talk about this. So let's dive in. First, GMs, keep in mind, this is a rare Ancestry. There are definitely feats in here that are good, but there's nothing broken in this Ancestry. As for starting stats, 10 hit points, pretty basic. We've got other ancestries that have that particular amount of hit points, like dwarves and minotaurs. This ancestry is large, which we've had before. I mean, minotaurs and some awakened animals are examples. For our boost, we have strength and wisdom, and a free boost, like all ancestors get, and a flaw in charisma. For languages, we have common and Jotun, and of course others based on your intelligence modifier, as normal, and a normal speed of 25 feet. Pretty basic. And we've got a couple of abilities to go over. First is Ivlar Weaving. You basically have a light spell you can use all the time. And you can turn it on or off or change its color by using a sustain action. Changing the color is actually pretty unique. But having a light spell and don't have to take the light spell, and even use it if you're not a spellcaster, is pretty nuts. And it goes with the other that this ancestry has, low light vision. So we can see in dim light just as well as we can see in bright lights. These two work together extremely well because you're creating dim light with your Ivlar Weaving, so you're pretty much always going to be able to see. Now let's talk about the heritages, starting with the Keeper Jotunborn. You become trained in survival and gain the Survey Wildlife feat. In addition, you get a bonus if you're tracking animals. Nothing too fancy here. You get a skill and a skill feat, but tracking animals will definitely be campaign based, so it depends on your campaign whether this is going to be good or not. Next we have the Plane Hopper heritage. You are medium sized, so you're downsizing yourself, and you get one cantrip from the occult list. Sadly, this is an innate spell, which means it's going to go off your charisma, which you do have a flaw in. But there are plenty of occult cantrips that don't use your charisma at all, such as my favorite spell, Forbidding War. This is a good heritage if you hit the right cantrip. Otherwise, you're probably better off picking something else. Next we have the Sage Jotunborn. Train in society and you get additional lore. Additional lore is a good feat, don't get me wrong, but this would be better if it had a feat tied to society. But additional lore does increase as you level up. So it is a good feat. This is a decent heritage. Not great, but decent. Next we have the Warrior Jotunborn, which is fantastic for martials, except monks. Monks will not get much out of this heritage. Your fist becomes a 1d6 weapon. In addition, you don't take a penalty for making lethal attacks with your fists. This heritage is especially good if you want to play an unarmed fighter, which, as you know, fighters get experts in unarmed strikes. Why monks don't get it, I will never understand. But fighters don't get to do lethal damage with their fists unless they take a heritage like this. So this is amazing for unarmed fighters. And it's good for any martial that wants to use unarmed attacks, except monks. And our final heritage is the Weaver Jotunborn. You become trained in crafting, and you gain a bonus to perception when you're searching for hidden details. Crafting is good, especially if you have downtime, but the hidden details thing, that's going to be campaign based. Good heritage, but not great. For first level feats, we start with Caretaker's Intuition. We become trained in nature, and we can get a general impression of the weather by spending 10 minutes. Honestly, being trained in nature is good, but anyone can get a general impression of the weather without this feat. So this isn't a great feat here. I do not recommend you take this. Next we have Caretaker's Restoration. Once per day, as a free action, you can restore an item to 1 hit point above its broken threshold. This is fantastic for shields, but I think this could be once per hour and wouldn't be broken. The item does have to be broken and not destroyed. Great, not great, but it's a good feat. You're basically getting one more use out of your shield, which is pretty good. Jotun's Eyes is just dark vision. Plain and simple. To be honest, not a great feat here for this, because with your Ivlar Weaving and your low light vision, you're almost never going to need dark vision. If you're trying to be a stealthy character, then this can be good. But otherwise, Not a great feat here. It would normally be a great feat, but for this particular ancestry, not really. Next we have Jotunborn Grappler. You become trained in athletics and gain the Titan Wrestler feats. This feat is all you really need to do any grapple build, and it's useful for other builds as well. Anyone that wants to do athletic skill actions like disarm, trip, shove will get value out of this feat. It's pretty good. Moving on, we have a pretty standard feat with Jotunborn lore. Every ancestry gets a feat like this. You become trained in survival and occultism, as well as Jotunborn lore. Survival is good because you do have the bonus to wisdom, and occultism can be good if you got good intelligence. Jotunborn lore is never going to come up. Decent feat, it's not really blowing my mind or anything. Jotunborn weapon familiarity, on the other hand, is a very good feat. It's a pretty standard feat. All ancestries get something like this. But a lot of them are actually pretty bad. They have pretty bad weapons. But this one is not. This one actually has some pretty good weapons. Bolas, great axes, halberds, maul, long spear, and war flail. A lot of these weapons have good damage and good traits. And they count as simple weapons, so a lot more classes can use these. Great feat here, highly recommend. And our final feat for level 1 is Plane Stepping Dash. We get to stride without provoking reactions, and then we get a bonus to our speed after we get done with that. It's a decent feat. It's not going to come up too often at low levels, but when you need it, you'll be glad you have it. It's especially good for spellcasters and ranged builds. Now we can talk about 5th level feats, starting with Call the First Tools. Once per day, you can conjure a simple tool that lasts all day, but if it leaves your possession for more than a minute, it disappears. At 9th level, this can be used once per hour. Pretty decent feat here. Other people can use the item as long as the task is simple and doesn't take very long. It takes less than a minute. It's great for when you need a unique tool for a situation. It's a very unique feat, but it's nothing blowing my mind or anything. Next we have what I consider to be the best feat at 5th level, Jotun's Battle Stance. You can enter a stance that gives reach to two-handed weapons. Doesn't sound like it'd be very powerful, but especially is for two-handed builds. Especially if the two-handed weapon happens to have good traits, like grapple, trip, and shove. Nobody should sleep on this feat. It is very good. Jotun's Grasp is another amazing feat here. For one action, you get to step and attempt a grapple check. You do have to be expert in athletics to take this, but this is fantastic action economy. The way the system works, most smart enemies will want to attack you and then step so that you have to waste an action. But with this, you're not wasting an action. You definitely not sleep on this feat either. Planar Resilience is another great feat. You treat hot and cold environments as if they were one step less severe. In addition, each day you can choose whether to be resistant to fire or cold damage. The environmental thing isn't going to come up as much as you think, but the resistance to common damage types is very good. I recommend this feat as well. And lastly, for level 5, we have Pounding Leap. We get a strike with our fist and then make a high jump or long jump. You don't need a running start. In addition, if you strike a unattended object or flat surface, you get a bonus on the jump. It is good action economy because it normally takes 2 actions to jump. The problem is when you would actually want to use this. It could come up, but it probably won't. It's a decent feat. It's not great, but decent. At level 9, we'll start with Build the First Walls. You gain Wall of Stone as an innate spell. It does have to be a vertical wall though, but this doesn't care about your charisma flaw. While it is a weaker version, spellcasters are getting this around the same time. And you can cast this even if you're not a spellcaster. You can't do as much with it because it does have to be a vertical wall, but this is a great battlefield control feat. Highly recommend. Ivlar's Deflection is a decent feat. It requires the Keeper Jotunborn heritage. Essentially, as a reaction, if you get critically hit by physical damage, you can roll a DC 17 flat check. If you succeed, the hit becomes a normal hit. They say that AC is about not getting crits, not about not getting hits. So, a 20% chance to avoid a crit is actually pretty good. I do recommend this feat. Next is Jotun's Boost. You need to have a hand free and be next to an ally that's smaller than you. But you're large, so most characters are going to be smaller than you. You pick them up and you throw them 25 feet. Or 30 feet if you have both hands free. Like if you're a monk or something. This does not trigger reactions. And the ally doesn't take any fall damage. But if they land within melee reach of an enemy, they can make a strike as a reaction. Not only is this feat insanely fun to use, but what most people don't realize is you can use this to get ranged enemies away from attackers as well. Pretty freaking awesome. Highly recommend this feat. Plain Step is another good feat. You gain concealment, but you can't use it to hide or sneak. It's a good defensive option because they do have to roll a flat check to even target you with anything. This does take 2 actions to use, but otherwise doesn't have any restrictions. You're not doing much else on your turn, but it does last pretty long. Recommended. For level 13 feats, we start with Ivlar's Boundary Break. We can cast Flicker as a 4th rank spell once per day. When you sustain the spell, you increase the distance you teleport to 15 feet rather than 10. Resistance to all damage except force is very good. The problem with this feat is that Flicker makes you teleport randomly. So yes, it will be harder for enemies to pin you down, but you can teleport yourself into like a pit of lava or something. It's a good feat, but you do have to be extremely careful with it. Ranged builds will love this feat as long as you're careful with it. Next we have Jotun's Restoration, which requires Caretaker's Restoration. Now you can use Caretaker's Restoration once per hour. Honestly, it could have worked like this at level 1. No way am I taking this at level 13. It's just not good at this level. Plane Hop requires plane stepping dash to take. Once per 10 minutes, you can teleport to anywhere you can reach with your speed. Once per 10 minutes is actually a big improvement. It's essentially once per combat. And this isn't going to trigger reaction. And it's not a spell. It's a very solid feat. And finally, for level 13, we have Smoothing Stomp. You stomp and get rid of even magical difficult terrain and greater difficult terrain. It lasts for 1 minute. It's very good because you're large, which increases the emanation. Difficult terrain can be a huge hindrance to the party when it comes up. Recommended. At level 17, we have Jotun's Heart. This does require Jotun's Battle Stance, but that's a good feat to begin with. You become huge, and you have a reach of 10 feet all the time now. You also get to increase your hit points by your level. You're essentially getting toughness for free, and it stacks with toughness, which means you have a ton of HP. In addition, if you go into Jotun's Battle Stance, all your weapons now have a reach of 15 feet. Now just two-handed. This is a crazy, insane feat. You're basically taking up 9 squares now, and you have a 15-foot reach, which means you threaten so much of the battlefield. You should always consider this one. You don't even need to be a giant instinct barbarian now to get huge size. Pretty freaking awesome. Unfortunately, our next feat isn't that great. Jotun's Transposition. Twice per week, you can cast interplanetary teleports as a spell, but you can only target yourself. You can travel to the universe, the astral plane, or the fray. This is a pretty useless feat. It's never going to come up unless it's part of the campaign. I could see it then, but otherwise, don't take this. And the last feat that Jotunborns get is Planar Traveler. This does require Plane Hop. Essentially, if you use this, all of your strides now become teleports. You can still only teleport as far as your speed would allow, but you don't trigger reactions. Unless they are based specifically on teleportation. This is basically just a whole bunch of teleports, which is fantastic for ranged belts. Highly recommended. And that's everything you guys need to know about the Jotunborn Ancestry. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Pathfinder 2e teamwork content. And I love hearing from you guys. So make sure you leave a comment about the Jotunborn Ancestry either here or on my Discord server. Link is in the description. If you like my content, you can check out this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. And remember, teamwork is vital. It helps us solve problems.